Vice President Vance delivers remarks in Greenland. Okay, full context. All right. The rhetoric against Greenland has been ramping up like a lot. Like a lot lately. They were planning a trip because there have been a number of like official slash unofficial state visits over to Greenland in an effort to like propagandize and get, I guess, get like the American people ready for an annexation of an allied territory. They were planning to visit a few places, but the visit was canceled. They only stayed on a U.S. Military base over in Greenland, where J.D. Vance made these remarks. This is being done in a climate of increasing political tension. Like, it's getting worse rapidly. Let's just watch the thing.
And then we'll take some questions from the reporters. So, number one, I think a lot of Americans wonder, why does Greenland matter so much? Why does the mission of this base matter so much to the American people? And I learned a lot about that today myself. Of course, you can read about it in a book, but I saw it up close and personal. And if, God forbid, to my fellow Americans, if a missile was fired from an enemy country or an enemy submarine into the United States, it is the people here before us who would give notice to our brave men and women further south in the United States to let people know what was coming and, God willing, to try to shoot it down and prepare for it. That's one of the things that we do at installations like this. We know that Russia and China and other nations are taking an extraordinary interest in Arctic passageways and Arctic naval routes, and indeed in the minerals of the Arctic territories. We need to ensure that America is leading in the Arctic, because we know that if America doesn't, other nations will fill the gap where we fall behind.
So obvious, like I hopefully this doesn't need stating, but like obviously this is completely incoherent. For one, we already have military bases in Greenland. If we wanted to, we could have more. For two, nothing threatens Greenland. The only other military presence in the Arctic that we would need to be concerned about is Russia, and this administration is pro-Russia. Like we've literally put out executive rulings on our intention to diversify Russian spending and reintegrate them into the world economy, as well as lifting sanctions. We are an ally to Russia. We are the bad guys now. So the idea that like we need to annex Greenland to better protect ourselves against Russian military, it doesn't make any sense. Isn't he saying this on the U.S. Army base in Greenland? Yes.
So what you guys do is so critically important. I think a lot of Americans, certainly I, didn't realize it fully until President Trump started talking about the importance of our Arctic mission, about building upon it, and
fucking cult, man. Jesus Christ. Oh yeah, this I was running as VP. This matter of apparently enormous economic and military, import was only made clear to me after our glorious leader, President Trump, perhaps divinely inspired, started to enlighten us all on it.
Ensuring that America can lead in the Arctic for the next generation. And now I want to talk about, of course, the interaction and what Denmark, I think, has done, and sometimes in partnership with us, but let's be honest, what Denmark over the last 20 years has failed to do in some cases, because we know that unfortunately this place, this base, the surrounding area is less secure than it was 30, 40 years ago, because some of our allies haven't kept up. As China and Russia have taken greater and greater interest in Greenland, in this base, in the activities of the brave Americans right here, we know that too often our allies in Europe have not kept pace. They haven't kept pace with military spending, and Denmark has not kept pace in devoting the resources necessary to keep this base, to keep our troops, and in my view, to keep the...
Denmark hasn't spent enough money protecting our military base from Russia. It's our military base. What?
People of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, from China, and from other nations. Now, President Trump, as he says all the time, and as a lot of people recognize, is a president of peace. We want to have good relationships with everybody. That includes, even to the extent possible, the Chinese and the Russians. But part of having good relations is showing your strength when you have to. And unfortunately, the story of Greenland over the past 20 years when it comes to security is that we've underinvested in the infrastructure, we've underinvested in the security architecture, and we've underinvested in the brave men and women who are doing a very hard job, as Mike said, to keep all of us safe. That has to change. Now, when I pointed out...
Why the would China make an incursion on Greenland? It's all of these explanations are politically incoherent. They make no sense at all if you know anything about the issue. This is just a land grab. You could make these arguments in favor of literally any land acquisition, right? Like, now that military reach is global for most major superpowers, right? Or for any superpower, but like for most major countries, you could make this argument anywhere. We need to seize this island because this island is like allows us to set up missile bases that could counter, like we could protect like an umbrella, you know, a nuclear umbrella here. We could protect here. We could protect here. We need docks here because what if we need like faster deployment of naval vessels to this region? You could do this for everything, absolutely everything. Call me a conspiracy brain, but do you think this might have anything to do with the Northeast Passage? Well, yeah, I mean, it's basically like as climate change heats up the world and Greenland becomes more habitable, it will be more and more useful real estate. Right now, it's not so much, but don't worry, that'll change. And these seas will be potentially more valuable, more useful, you know? Now, the main country that benefits from you know, positive developments here is obviously Russia, because they control half the Arctic Circle just by virtue of being, you know, Russia right up against it. Yeah, we do already functionally control our portion of the Arctic Circle because we're allies with Canada and with Greenland. And through Alaska, of course. Were.
A couple of weeks ago that in some ways, with all due respect to our Danish allies, they had not.
What he was saying before was actually true. There's a deal in NATO where you should spend at least X amount in your GDP and military. For one, that's a recommendation. And for two, it wouldn't matter. Even if Denmark spent 10% of their GDP on military, it would have no effect whatsoever on the safety and security of our military bases in Greenland. There's no relationship. It's a complete non sequitur. Denmark spends 5%. Do they really spend 5%? Denmark military spending GDP. We're about to, at least. Well, things have been changing lately. No, I just see 2%, which is the requirement, right? 2%? At their lowest, it looks like it was down to 1.2%. But honestly, who gives a f? It's Denmark.
Not kept pace. There was a lot of criticism from Denmark, a lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me, at others in our administration for saying the obvious, which is that Denmark hasn't done a good job at keeping Greenland safe. And you know, one of the things I heard was, well, what about the many Danes who lost their lives in the war on terror fighting alongside the United States? Well, look, we obviously honor the sacrifice of our Danish friends in the war on terror 20 years ago, just as, for example, the French honor the sacrifice of Americans in Normandy 80 years ago.
What the fuck is he going on about? Who is this rhetoric for? Like genuinely, who's gonna hear this? It's just weird.
But recognizing that there are important security partnerships in the past does not mean that we can't have disagreements with allies in the present about how to preserve our shared security for the future. And
this is Cold War rhetoric with no boogeyman. That's a good way of putting it, yeah. You know, the fascist needs like a big, powerful foreign enemy to juxtapose their, you know, they need it to like legitimize the emergency powers they have to use, the constant state of terror, you know, the messaging. But who's the big threat here? Russia, the country that couldn't even take Ukraine? They're the big threat? They're our allies. They do like what Trump is doing here, though. Putin says it would be a profound mistake to dismiss Trump's push for Greenland. Oh, no, I'm sure he's probably talked about it directly with Trump. Is the Greenland stuff really in anticipation of climate change? I think so, yeah. A lot of Republicans are, certainly the oligarchs, like the real people on top, they know climate change is happening. It's not like Elon doesn't. Elon was using the threat of climate change as an excuse for pushing his electric vehicles for years before he, you know, became a Republican or whatever, or openly became a Republican. A lot of them know climate change is happening. They might disagree on whether or not it's like anthropogenic or whatever, but no, they want you dead, and they want to live in sealed off bunkers where they're kings and all their needs are met with like Tesla robots or whatever. They don't care. They hate you. This is a bit of a bit of like a narrow cut, and I'm not super educated on it, but I've heard like blurbs that kind of piqued my interest. But my understanding is that stuff like this was actually pretty common with the European aristocracy during the 2 centuries of Black Plague, when you had these recurring waves of the Black Plague. And keep in mind, like, we're talking, you know, medieval Europe. They thought this was a plague sent by God to kill the unworthy, right? Like a lot of people were like, oh yeah, the Black Plague. Well, God's punishing us for, I don't know, like having Jews in the country or whatever, or any number of like reasons. Yeah, of course they blame the Jews. It's that shit's been going on for millennia. But like there were lots of instances. I can't cite a specific example. I'm reiterating information that I received myself in kind of like an uncertain sense. But my understanding is that pretty often the nobility and the clergy would be like, the Black Plague's happening. It's obviously meant for the peasantry and not for us. We can't really fix it. What we need to do is make sure we survive it. So they would like hoard grain, and they would engage in trade and like domestic policies that actually exacerbated Black Plague infection rates within the population, as long as they kept themselves secure. Like they would, if they would allocate resources towards keeping their like safe castles or bunkers, their version of a bunker, I guess, even if it meant more people died. I think we're basically just seeing this. It's the same damn thing.
And that's what this is about. There is no amount of bullying, no amount of obfuscating, no amount of confusing the issue. Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security architecture of this incredible, beautiful landmass filled with incredible people. That has to change. And because it hasn't changed,
just absolutely psycho shit. Denmark, you have not invested enough militarily in this territory that is under your administration. We have no choice but to annex it. What? I think this rhetoric here, he's trying to play off of the fact that a lot of people in Greenland don't like Denmark because there's a lot of built-up tension about like political autonomy and separatism, and then there's the treatment of the indigenous people in Greenland. There's a lot of like underlying tension there, and I think what JD Vance is trying to do is like use rhetoric that will push people in Greenland to maybe support him, because he wants them to think of it as like, we could both get autonomy from Denmark and military protection from the United States, which wouldn't be true. I don't think it's working either, yeah, but I think that's like the goal of this kind of rhetoric.
This is why President Trump's policy in Greenland is what it is. It's consistent with the first Trump administration, where you saw significant investments in Arctic security, and it will continue over the next 4 years under President Trump's leadership. And let me finally, before I kick it over to the media, make one comment about the people of Greenland. The colonel here, the base commander, who came here first as a second lieutenant, and I guess, Colonel, this is your second duty station here, and we're proud of you and proud of all of you guys who are serving and helping keep us safe. You know, I heard a lot about the respect that our American troops show for the local Greenlandic population, the way that we make and create shelter for hunters and dog sledders, the way that we found ways to turn over traditional tribal land to some of the local population.
I don't get it, where you get that clergy pushed for infections. They literally had higher death rates than the rest of society due to them administering the sick. How much do I have to preface a statement that I make with, please don't argue with me on it, for you to not argue with me on it? That was like a solid minute of me going, I am just reiterating a point that I've heard, I can't substantiate it. With, like, I cushioned that as much as I possibly could. And yeah, I'm not talking about the clergy as in average priests. I'm talking about, like, the people closer to the Vatican. You didn't even say thank you to the dead clergyman? That's true.
In order to ensure that they're able to live in accordance with their values. We respect, as the president said in his State of the Union address, we respect the self-determination of Greenlanders.
That is the rhetoric he's trying to pull here.
Excuse me. We believe in the self-determination of the population of the people of Greenland. And our argument is very simple. It is not with the people of Greenland, who I think are incredible and have an incredible opportunity here. Our argument really is with the leadership of Denmark, which is underinvested in Greenland and underinvested in its security architecture. That simply must change. It is the policy of the United States that will change, and I'm proud to be able to stand here with so many brave Americans to better...
So just because you acknowledge you're unsure, they can't criticize you? Listen, I can't make it easier for you to make friends in real life, but I'm providing you now perhaps like an important, like a pointer to it. This has to stop, okay? This has to stop. Your reflexive oppositional, your like push to be contrarian. It's got to be exhausting the people you live with too. You have to stop. So just because you say you're unsure, you can't be criticized? Yes. Don't be mean to me. You're being mean. You're being mean and you're hurting my feelings. What kind of person would do that?
Understand the security mission and better understand what you guys do each and every day. For that, I'm grateful for your service. I'm even more grateful. I love you guys. I'm proud of you guys. And President Trump stands behind you and will for the remainder of his administration.
That's great.
Thank you all. God bless you. All right, now we'll take a few questions. Both you guys have your hands up. Whoever can go first. Red scarf, go first.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Do you have any plans, are there plans to expand the U.S.'s military presence in Greenland beyond this base?
Well, are there immediate plans to expand our military presence? No, but are there general objectives that we want to accomplish that will certainly require us investing more resources, investing in additional military, icebreakers, investing in additional naval ships that will have a greater presence in Greenland? Absolutely. And we know that's necessary because we know, as Mike talked about, and certainly I talked about, there has been an expansion of the security footprint and the security interest of Russia and China. They're doing what they believe is in their interest. The United States must do what I know is in our interest, which is to make sure that Greenland is safe.
Even if you believe this horse shit, which you shouldn't, because it would make you less intelligent than you are now. The idea of like, we have no choice but to annex Greenland, as opposed to, I don't know, what if we just built a naval base there? Like it doesn't even make sense in their own framework, because if your concern was like security in the Arctic, you would want to, for one, maintain your allies in the region, right? You'd want to be on good terms with Norway, Denmark, Canada. Like you would not want to go like, well, what do we do to secure control of the Arctic Ocean? What if we made open antagonists of the countries that occupy like a third of the circle, you know? But also, if you really wanted to build out security here, you could just build a naval base or two over here. Say, oh, we'll invest 20 billion with your permission, Greenland. We'll build a naval base over here. And they'd be like, okay, whatever. 20 billion. That's like more than the GDP of Greenland, probably. Sure, go for it. It's just, it's nonsensical. It's a non sequitur. Soft power, what's that? Yeah, no kidding. Have you considered soft power as fake and gay? If you were straight, you'd be hard right now.
Greenland doesn't have self-determination. If the people of Greenland have their future controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, it's not going to make their lives better off. And most importantly, it's going to make American and world national security, world security, much, much weaker. We can't, we in some ways need to wake up. We need to wake up from a failed 40-year consensus that said that we could ignore the encroachment of powerful countries as they expand their ambitions. We can't just bury our head in the sand, or in Greenland, bury our head in the snow and pretend that the Chinese are not interested in this very large landmass. We know that they are. They've taken steps to put Greenland in ridiculous debt traps to invest and exploit the resources here. And we know that they're sending a lot.
Step one, invest in Greenland the same way that you have in every other country on Earth, because you're China and your financial power stretches around the world. Step two, annex the entire nation.
Of military resources here. Yes, over the medium term, the United States will meet that challenge. We will put our own resources here. We already have a lot of great resources here, but we know we're going to have to do more to counter some of the nations that we know that we're competitive with. Sure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. And the president said today that we have to have Greenland. By being here today, are you also conveying that message that the U.S. is very serious in its desire to acquire Greenland?
Well,
I really wish these reporters would use the term correctly, annex, because that's what they're talking about. Invade or annex. Like you should use the right terms here.
The president said we have to have Greenland, and I think that we do have to be more serious about the security of Greenland. We can't just ignore this place. We can't just ignore the president's desires, but
that's the one clip that I saw of this. Well, yeah, the president said we have to annex Greenland and we can't just ignore the president's desires. That's a bit of a slip, huh? The will of the dear leader. Yeah. Jesus Christ. How long until they just call up the good old boys in the coup department? You can't coup Greenland because there's no underlying political tension for them to take advantage of. It'd be one thing if it was like a close 50-50 race or whatever, between pro-US separatists and I don't know, loyalists or whatever, but no one in Greenland wants to be owned by America. So if we installed a leader, like how would you do that? There's not really like a mechanism for them to take advantage of, you know? Nobody wants this. Yeah. It's literally like we have to invade or annex. That's it.
Most importantly, we can't ignore what I said earlier, which is the Russian and Chinese encroachment in Greenland. We have to do more. Now,
response number one, glory to President Trump. Response number two, China's invading it or something. I don't know. Geopolitical military experts haven't figured it out yet.
The president said in his State of the Union address, and he was very clear about this, is we respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland. But my argument again to them is...
Do you think they're getting this from the Kremlin directly? Because it is like line by line what Russia did. We respect the autonomy and self-determination of the people of Crimea, which is why we'll allow them to like vote on their own independence under Russian occupation, and a Russian soldier will overlook their shoulder as they write down whether or not they want to be a part of Russia. And then, hey, we'll do the same thing to the Donbass, you know?
I think that you'd be a lot better coming under the United States security umbrella than you have been under Denmark's security umbrella, because what Denmark's security umbrella has meant is effectively they've passed it all off to brave Americans and hope that we would pick up the tab. We're simply saying to the people of Greenland, when the president says we've got to have Greenland, he's saying this island is not safe. A lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people are making a play. We know that America cares about the security of this island for the sake of the people of Greenland, but also for the sake of the national security.
There's also a very Russian element to how like the reasons why we need to annex Greenland are, there's like 50 of them, you know? Well, it's to protect the people of Greenland. Well, it's because Denmark hasn't spent enough security. Well, we're actually trying to defend our military holdings because a military base needs defending in an allied country. Well, it's like, you know, our allies haven't done enough to protect the area, even though they're part of NATO. And if anything happened in the region, we could Article 5 that shit and we have effective control. Well, it's about controlling the Arctic Circle, even though we've deliberately alienated like Canada, the country that controls a quarter of the Arctic Circle. Like it's about respecting the self-determination of the people of Greenland, even though we obviously don't care about that because we're pretending they want to be controlled by us, even though 95% of them say they don't. Like, it's every reason and it's no reason.
The interests of the United States of America. So our message is very simple. Yes, the people of Greenland are going to have self-determination. We hope that they choose to partner with the United States because we're the only nation on earth that will respect their sovereignty and respect their security, because their security is very much our security, as these brave Americans show.
Thank you. John Parkinson with ABC News. Thanks for bringing us along on this historic trip. I wanted to ask you about last week's news with the Atlantic. We've had a couple questions on Greenland. I feel like you've answered that. But I did want to ask, did you express your concerns to the president that you were opposed to the Houthi strike? And also, what did you mean when you asked, or when you said in that thread that the president wasn't aware that his directions for Yemen were inconsistent with his message on Europe?
Well, I didn't quite say that. I think that's a slight misunderstanding of what I said. But we've talked, of course, in the American media about Signalgate, as I called it, for the past week. And here's what I told the president and the entire national security team is that, yes, it is in the interest of the United States of America to preserve navigation. Yes, it is in the interest of the United States to kill terrorists who are preventing navigation in the Red Sea. But we got to make sure that we do it right. We have to be careful. We have to make sure the timing is right. And of course, what that leak revealed, I think, is a private communication between the president's senior advisors about how best to prepare the American people for what we all thought we had to do, about the right timing of when we should do something, and of course, surfacing the strategic questions that we needed to decide and brief the president on so that he could ultimately make the decision about what we would do. What I saw in that Signal chat, and of course what I've seen in the president's senior national security team, is that sometimes we all agree and sometimes we all disagree, but it's important that we all have an honest conversation amongst ourselves and with the president of the United States about what we think is the best interest of the national security of the United States of America. I support the president's decision to strike the Houthis. I always supported the president's decision to strike the Houthis.
Or is it things that you did not know about before? Are we talking battleships, icebreakers, any type of military equipment, or is it?
What would Trump do if Denmark demanded U.S. troops to leave Greenland? I don't know. I mean, you have to understand that, like, this is so out of nowhere and so unpopular. This isn't even like a hardline MAGA talking point. Like the average Trump voter's like, yeah, man, Greenland's been independent, or no, Greenland's been mistreated by Denmark for too long. You know, it's not, we're in pretty uncharted territory. There's also like a legitimate possibility that the Pentagon just doesn't go through with it. Like, even if President Trump started pushing for this, like, this is so egregious a potential military action that you might start having command breakdowns. You know, it's completely unprecedented. Vosh acting like the people in the Pentagon aren't evil. There are millions of people who work for the Department of Defense. Okay, trust me, it's not just about like the senior officials that Pete Hegseth has appointed. It's just so out there. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to. We're out in uncharted territory.
Economic.
Well, I don't want to get too specific, but yes, we know that the Chinese are very, very interested in this island. We've seen some of the economic pressures that they've tried to place on Greenland. We know that they're increasingly engaging in military training and military interest. Certainly, they've started to describe themselves as a near Arctic power. And I think part of that is justifying taking a further interest in Greenland and some of the surrounding territories. So we've seen very strong evidence that both the Chinese...
Did he just call Greenland island? Isn't Greenland an island? It's just a really big island. I guess island is kind of like Australia is an island, and it's huge. I mean, everything's an island, I guess, if you want to like draw out the definition. I don't think there's a size limit to the island definition.
And the Russians are interested in Greenland. And why wouldn't they be interested in Greenland? It's a beautiful place. It has incredible people. It has its geographic placement makes it very important for the national security of the United States, but for world security. What we have to recognize is that if the Chinese and the Russians are going to pursue their national interest, we need a president who's going to pursue the American national interest, and that means ensuring that Greenland is safe.
When can we expect an update on the internal investigation into that Signal chat leak? Has that investigation concluded?
I wouldn't get your hopes up.
I think we'll get an update soon. Look, we take it very seriously. We all accept that a journalist should not have been invited into the chat, and members of the administration, including my dear friend Mike, have taken responsibility for it. But I find the American media's obsession with this issue very, very interesting, because I happen to remember about 4 years ago when American military leadership made a catastrophic error that got 13 innocent Americans killed in Afghanistan and had about...
I just realized that I don't care about the follow-up to this. Yeah, I don't know. Man. There was a response following this. Oh, hello, linkers. Following this press conference, there was a statement by the Danish foreign minister. Can I get that? Hold on.
I have a message for our American friends
Left
and
the
all
audio.
of us who are listening. Much is being said these days. Many accusations and many allegations have been made. And of course, we are open to criticism. But let me be completely honest. We do not appreciate the tone in which is being delivered. We respect that the United States needs a greater military presence in Greenland, as Vice President Vance mentioned this evening.
Now, pussy rhetoric. Yeah, it's not. You need to look at Canada a little more closely, I think.
We, Denmark and Greenland, are very much open to discussing this with you, with an open mind. Today, NATO's security guarantee also covers Greenland. But we very much welcome if NATO and allies would play a greater role in the Arctic. We will shoulder our share of the responsibility. No one should doubt that. I am pleased that the Vice President today emphasized the right of the Greenlandic people to determine their own future. This is important. Just a few hours ago, a new Greenlandic government took office with strong support from the population and a strong desire to develop the Greenlandic society in close collaboration with Denmark and with the Danish government.
Okay, yeah. Total waste of time. Massive pussy. If all, like, you're literally like the most powerful country in the world is openly saying that they will annex your territory, and that a protected territory under your jurisdiction would be better under their jurisdiction, and you criticize the tone of their message. Jesus Christ. To be honest, what can you do? He should just flatly say, like, America, you know, Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders, to those people, and with us. They can decide what they want, and they don't want you. Simple. The Greens.